we can go ahead and get into our first story here. It says, report those who celebrate Charlie Kirk's death to employers, Vance says. So the vice president is advising people to narc on people. If you have a coworker or a neighbor or a brother-in-law that you don't like, and they said something bad about Charlie Kirk, you turn them into the authorities. You be a good citizen. So, this story is fairly new, so there's not a whole lot of reporting when I first pulled it up. It looks like there is more reporting coming from the left than there is from the center or the right, but we'll refresh it here just to make sure. Still have 16 articles, still have 50% of the reporting is coming from the left, with 25% coming from the center, 25% coming from the right. 75% of the sources are high factuality or above. And I have my stories sorted by factuality like I usually do. And the very first story up here is the Associated Press article. So we'll go ahead and jump into that. So this is the story from the Associated Press. Vice President J.D. Vance on Monday jumped onto the conservative movement, demanding consequences for those who have cheered Charlie Kirk's killing, calling on the public to turn in anyone who says distasteful things about the assassination of his friend and political ally. When you see someone celebrating Charlie's murder, call them out, Vance urged listeners on the Slain Activists podcast Monday. And hell, call their employer. Vance's call included a vow to target some of the biggest funders of liberal causes as conservatives stepped up their targeting of private individuals for their comments about the killing. It marked an escalation in a campaign that some warned invoked some of the darkest chapters of American history. Very true. The government involvement in this does not inch this closer to The government involvement in this does inch this closer to looking like McCarthyism, said Adam Goldstein of the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, referring to the 1950s campaign to root out communism that led to false allegations and ruined careers. It was not a shining moment for free expression. Campaign broadens to those who quote Kirk critically. Wow. Republican-controlled states such as Florida, Oklahoma, and Texas have launched investigations of teachers accused of inappropriate statements after last week's assassination. The U.S. military has invited members of the public to report those who celebrate or mock the killing and said some troops have already been removed for their comments. What happened to freedom of speech in this country? At the same time, the Trump administration has vowed to target what it contends is a vast liberal network that inspired the shooter, even as authorities maintain it appears he acted alone and the investigation is ongoing. The campaign has broadened to include even those whose statements were critical of Kirk without celebrating his assassination. The Washington Post fired Karen Attiah, an opinion columnist, for posts on the day of the shooting that lamented how white America was not ready to solve gun violence, and that quoted Kirk degenerating the intelligence of prominent black women such as Michelle Obama. PEN America, a press freedom group, warned in a statement that firings of Attiah's risk creating a chilling effect. Goldstein worried there are many cases of people targeted simply for quoting Kirk or failing to mourn his passing adequately. That's one of the key symptoms of cancel culture, he said, trying to paint everyone with the same brush. Conservatives coined the term cancel culture for what they claimed was the persecution of those on the right for their views, especially related to the COVID-19 pandemic and the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol, leading to campaigns to get regular people fired. It was a significant cause for President Donald Trump, who pledged to end it during his campaign last year. But after the Kirk killing, he and the administration have instead leaned into it from the right. Here are the conservatives, a provocateur to many Democrats. A father of 2 children and a Christian conservative, Kirk was a hero to many Trump Republicans for his fiery warnings about the dangers of the Democrats and the ability to organize young voters. But Kirk also was a provocateur and supporter of Trump's attempt to overturn his 2020 election loss, who left a long record of partisan quips that enraged many on the left. According to Kirk, empathy is a made-up New Age term, so keep the jokes coming. It's what he would have wanted. Read one post on X that Melvin Villiers Jr., a Clemson University music professor, reposted the day of the killings, according to a screenshot circulated by college Republicans demanding his firing. Clemson eventually fired one staffer and suspended Villiers and another professor after intense pressure from elected South Carolina Republican officials. Other targeted posters, such as Army Lieutenant Colonel Christopher Ladnier, simply quoted Kirk on the day of his assassination. This included Kirk calling Civil Rights Act a beast that has now turned into an anti-white weapon. His criticism of Martin Luther King Jr. and his statement of some gun deaths are the cost of a robust Second Amendment. Jesus. Sorry. Apparently my Brave browser doesn't work quite as well as I would like. Lanier, who had been the target of conservative activists online, said in a Facebook message to the Associated Press that he would respond when and if his chain of command takes action. Texas Governor Greg Abbott approvingly posted a video of Texas Tech University student who was arrested Friday after a confrontation at a campus vigil for Kirk, writing, "This is what happens to the person who was mocking Charlie Kirk's assassination at Texas Tech. Some people targeted have been victims of mistaken identity. A school district in rural Elkhorn, Wisconsin reportedly received more than 800 messages after one conservative influencer mistakenly identified as an associate principal at an elementary school as celebrating Kirk's death. Authorities say Kirk was shot by 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, who grew up in a conservative household in southern Utah, but was enmeshed in leftist ideology, according to the state's Republican governor, Spencer Cox. Cox said an investigation may reveal more about what motivated the attack after Robinson's initial court appearance scheduled for Tuesday. The governor said the suspect, who allegedly carved memes onto his bullet casings, appeared radicalized by the dark corners of the internet. On Monday, Vance was joined by Kirk's podcast by Stephen Miller, Trump's deputy chief of staff, who vowed to crack down on what he called the vast domestic terrorist network he blamed for Kirk's death. Alluding to free speech concerns, Vance said, "You have the crazies on the far left that say, oh, Stephen Miller and J.D. Vance, they're going after constitutionally protected free speech." But he added, no. We're going to go after the NGO network that foments facilities and engages in violence. Facilitates and engages in violence, a reference to non-governmental organizations. The White House did not immediately return a request seeking clarity on the remarks, including which groups might be targeted. The idea of retribution campaigns against individuals or groups for expressing particular viewpoints has alarmed many. Just having that ideology, just believing differently than some other American is not illegal, Republican Senator James Lankfield of Oklahoma said on CNN on Monday. Instead, he said that groups that may have been involved in illegal or violent acts should be targeted. On Kirk's show, Vance talked about the need for unity after the assassination, but then dismissed it as impossible given what he described as the left's embrace of political violence. Naming two foundations that fund a wide range of liberal causes, Vance said there is no unity with the people who fund these articles, who pay salaries of these terrorist sympathizers. This is really dangerous rhetoric, Mr. Vice President. Democrat officials have roundly condemned Kirk's murder. Democrats have also been victims of political violence recently, including the June assassination of a Minnesota state lawmaker and her husband, and the 2022 beating of former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband in their San Francisco home, though there's no proof that that was politically motivated. Or is there? Is it a conspiracy? Caitlin Legiak of Stop Government Censorship, formed to fight the Trump administration's use of government against its political rivals, said that it was one thing for people making abhorrent statements to face consequences. When we get concerned is when there appears to be a concerted effort in the government to use this tragedy to push political opponents, or to punish political opponents, she said. Which is what I'm afraid that this might lead to. Which is why I highlighted that article. So, hey, thanks for checking out this video from Nightly News this morning. If you wouldn't mind, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a video or when we go live on Tuesdays and Fridays.